closure of office during MCO and MCO, because a lot of process and transactions still need physical presence. When you need physical presence, then we have to depend on whether the office is open or closed, and especially 20% capacity right now, really we are reducing the efficiency. Number two, control on the number of visitor and customer. Again, e-Temu is implemented, that's good, right? But then again, it's also reducing the thing. The next question is that, are we using e-Temu just to fix the meeting, or can we really move it really online? That's also a challenge. Social distancing, right? For all intent and purposes, we would like to avoid physical contact right now, but then if we avoid physical contact, can we actually do it online and move it on email, on an e-form manner, things that actually the website or the portal could be more friendly, right? Then the next one is so-called reducing number of officers in the manpower in the land office. Obviously, work from home and all these things has its limitation. And of course, the last one, restriction in traveling. Kai is unable to travel to law firm for signing. We cannot travel to inter-district, interstate. You have to understand, a practitioner like me in KL, basically we serve a few states very, very easily. Number one, KL. Number two, Selangor, obviously, right? And then, of course, we also sometimes serve Negeri Sembilan, being very close enough within Klang Valley, and also the southern part of Perak and certain part, the west part of Pahang as well. So I'm highlighting to you, because of that, we all having this problem and how to actually solve this. And for all intent and purposes, a lawyer is actually the producer and the director and a coordinator of the entire real estate transaction. And because of that, we negotiate with a lot of stakeholders. And when we talk to so many stakeholders, we want to make sure that it can be completed in time. One of the key things in land transaction that everyone must know is the word time is of the essence, right? So if time is of the essence, you cannot keep the days, you cannot keep the time, and there's a delay, and we don't know, and people don't operate in their usual operating hours, we have an issue. Next slide. So what are the legal implications? What kind of solution can we look at? I think some of these solutions already been addressed. Let's look at the legal implication. Next slide. Legal due diligence process is affected. Potential buyer unable to conduct land search during closure of office or restricted interstate and inter-district movement. For example, I really have a case right now whereby one of the condition precedent for the completion of the entire deal is that a search to confirm the land use has been converted by the seller. But the problem is we cannot do that. And this is, of course, in Negeri Sembilan, right? In that sense, and really they are not subscribing to the system in relation to this. So I'm just highlighting to you there is a problem. And the proposed solution is to emulate KL and Selangor to enable e-land search. I'm happy to hear just now there are way forward to make sure that these are compulsory adoption. And also e-land search as implemented by KL Land Office are very, very influential. At least we can take those things as the authority. Now, one of the key things that being a lawyer or transacting, we are monitoring curating the entire transaction is to make sure that the authenticity of the document or certification that we get is something that we can rely upon. It's something we can rely upon or not second guess, right? So it's very important. We must have finality in relation to this search, in relation to help us to do this. Next slide. Parties' obligation to complete in dealing registration such as lease, charge, or transfer within time frame as agreed in the agreement. Like I said, in a typical transaction, right, whether it's secondary or primary, there's always a timeline. Within 14 days you must do this, otherwise you were subject to delay and whatnot. Within 7 days, within 7 working days, things like that. So what we should digital presentation could solve it. E-generating of presentation numbers such as consent to transfer in KL Land Office and online payment for Selangor. So what happens is that you make the payment online, right? And next thing you put into the smart box, right? That has been earlier on been indicated. I like the analogy to how to make the transaction in the PTG or the Land Office. How do you make it akin to a bank, right? Or the other party, or parties should negotiate the term. As a lawyer, you know what we do? Knowing that this is the question, we probably prolong the time to facilitate the challenges put forward by COVID-19. Although we have a force majeure, act of God kind of clauses to allow certain adjustment, but we must make it explicit too. Next slide. Attestation of document by solicitor, that's another one. right? Because we physically need to see this person, verify that person to prevent any land fraud. Because one way or another, we are still an officer of the land administration in one way or another, because you take our signature as correct, you take us to guard against any fraudulent activities, right? So I'm highlighting to you, how do we do this? People cannot travel. I have client of as far further away, they are somewhere in Manchester, also want to sign an agreement, right, with someone who is having a property and selling their property in Malaysia, but they are based in Manila. Things like that. What do you do, right? Proposed solution would be to accept, video signing and whatnot. But however, the task at the moment is what are the guidelines in relation to this to ensure that the potential of any hanky panky can be reduced to the least, right? Next slide. Financial process is also affected. Now, one of the key stakeholders in a land transaction have always been the bank, correct? Because the bank have to protect their interest before they release the money. The bank have to make sure that everything is in order before they can complete the transactions. Hence, confirmation in relation to caveat lodgement, registration of registration of the charge, and all these things need to be actually reflected very quickly. So the implement of e-official land search, e-lodgement of caveat, withdrawal of caveat, right? And also other thing, what are the other options to be explored so that the financial interests are protected? Trust me, with and without, right? These things, the whole thing must go on, but the financial interest is key. For without a proper financing system, real estate in Malaysia cannot sell. The value is not there. Next slide. I think very importantly, the last one, I think just now, Dato' Zaini have actually highlighted this about vacant possession. There's two prongs to this. One is the primary, one is the secondary market, because the presentation and the discovery of issues, the post presentation will have to have certain time frame and lapse, and the fact that we cannot actually confirm that and therefore delaying the vacant possession. Number two, primary market is also an issue. I noted that the very first panelist, Dato, is also in charge of strata title, right? And then we talk about spatium, we want to talk about stratum. I'm also a forefront in strata law as well. So I'm highlighting to you is that the problem with strata title application today, for example, as part of the issuance of vacant possession for housing development under Schedule H, is also a challenge, because the fact is that the surveyor's performance of his task during the pandemic, during the MCO, and the procurement of final and clean underlying title that talk about all this discharge, and because of this delay, will eventually delay the delivery of the vacant possession. And to Dr. Zaini representing REDA, the interest of developer will have to then pay out late delivery interest. And obviously, COVID Act 2019 is not enough to cover it, because it doesn't extend beyond 31st of August 2020. Next slide. Right, progressive payment of purchase price is another one. Every housing developer know that we have Schedule H and Schedule G in relation to that. And one part of this schedule is actually in order to charge a certain part of the payment from the end purchaser. One of the key things is that they must get the proper discharge and disclaimer from the bridging financer, right? And again, without the support of the land administration to confirm certain things, this collection of the scheduled payment will be impacted. Next slide. So that's all my presentation today. I'll keep it short. I think we have time for panels, but the whole idea here is that I would like to highlight to you is that for all intent and purposes, Malaysia, as far as land administration is concerned, I think is that there's value. There is inherent problem in the DNA because of the state and the federal government. And very, very importantly, I think it's also important to realize that why we need efficient to be even competitive in terms of doing the world ranking and the World Bank is because of this issue of liquidity. How do you buy and sell property in a fast and safe manner and ensure all the interests are properly protected? Our appeal compared to the rest of the world is very easy. We allow foreign direct ownership, yet the process is a little bit challenging and not so liquid as the other competitive nation in the first world. So that's my presentation. I hope that you can get some good idea from my sharing from the ground. Back to you, Mr. Moderator, Dato'.
Thank you, Mr. Chris.